Marcus, do you have any sense of the sheer scale of the number of victims that may have been involved? How many young girls might have been attacked over the last few decades?
I would say it's into thousands, probably tens of thousands, Mark. Some reports I've heard, some people I've spoken to, people in the know, would estimate possibly 250,000 young girls have been abused, systematically abused. And that's a massive problem for society as a whole. It begs the question, well, how can you have disadvantaged children, thousands and thousands of children across the country being abused by certain men, and often in gangs, often almost working like a mafiosa type organisation where they control their own areas, where the police are scared to set foot into those areas, where victims are not heard because they're not taken seriously. And if you've got, how do you get a 12 or 14-year-old girl to come forward and make complaints? And particularly when you've got historic cases going back a number of years, it's extremely difficult. Flipping that on its side, from a defence point of view or from a lawyer's point of view, I can see the difficulty, because that's probably why so few prosecutions succeed, because you've got evidential problems. How do the police prosecute? It's very easy to blame the police or to blame the prosecution service for not getting convictions, but we're dealing with very, very difficult situations. Vulnerable people whose evidence may be unreliable or called unreliable by the lawyers involved from years before. How do you then take that all the way through a prosecution case to achieve a conviction, to convince 12 people on a jury that that person is guilty? It's very difficult, and I think that's why there's so few convictions. Although with the Asian gang concerns, as it's being called, there have been thousands of people involved in these in this type of conduct, and many convictions across 30, 50 different towns and cities around the UK. It's a massive, widespread problem. We do need, I think, a full inquiry to try to figure out what the heck is going on.
And as a husband and loving father, what is your view of the men that have committed these appalling crimes?
Well, how do you put that into words? How do you explain? I can't understand how people abuse children. I don't understand that. It's something that is peculiar to that individual. It's something that makes somebody want to act in that way. It is nothing new. It's gone on forever, I suppose. I mean, as long as I've been a lawyer and working in law, it's been going on. It's just that it's developed in how that abuse is carried out now, and it's taken a different format, and there's different people involved. And with the Asian situation, it's because we've got so many more immigrants and an immigration problem within the local communities, and it has proliferated in those areas. So it's a development, it's a worrying development. It's difficult to know what's going on. There is a concern, which I perhaps just mentioned now, that I think we do have to be careful of, in that the way society is changing, the way media is changing, recent weeks and months, these stories and people I've seen on the media, even mainstream media, who are coming out with comments that I thought I'd never hear. You listen to what people are saying, you think, my goodness, did you really say that? That surely that's racist. You can't say that. But now people are saying things that even just a year or two ago probably wouldn't actually dare to say. And there is a big influence over what's happening in the media, and that's changing people's perception, the public's perception. We do have to be careful about how they blame cultures, though, blame other people, because we know that not all Pakistani men are child abusers. We know that. They're fine, upstanding people. It's only a minority of them, as the same with anybody who commits sex crimes. Thankfully, it's only a minority. But that minority is a big number. And it seems to me it's increasing. That number is increasing. And that's the worrying aspect, is how do you stop people committing horrendous sex crimes against young, vulnerable children?
So that's really troubling. You're suggesting that you think that what has happened over several decades continues to this day.
It not only continues, it's getting worse. There's no question about it. We're not getting to the bottom. What happens is somebody eventually gets caught, but the vast majority do not get caught. The odd few get caught. Even fewer get charged. Even fewer get convicted. So the number getting convicted is a tiny majority, it's a tiny number in relation to the overall number of people committing these offences. But the number of offences is increasing, in my view. You know, the sex crime, or the number of sex crimes has increased dramatically. You know, from so many years ago, we've now got more and more sex crimes being introduced, more offences being introduced by the government, more people being caught, more people being prosecuted, but it's still a tiny number in relation to the overall crimes. And there's so few people ever convicted. And when they are convicted, the punishments, well, are the punishments sufficient? I think most people in society would say, no, the punishment does not fit the crime. We don't have very tough punishments in this country.
If the rate of sexual crimes is higher among people that immigrate into the country, is that a conversation we need to have as a nation or not?
We do. We need openness and transparency.
Because many people, Marcus, don't want to have that conversation, or would say that that's a problematic conversation or even unacceptable.
It's a problematic conversation, but it's going to happen, Mark. It's going to happen if it's not on mainstream media, if the main politicians, the main political parties won't have that conversation, it will gradually change. I think we're at the stage now, I mean, for probably the first time for as long as I can remember, with the way politics is at the moment, with the social media influence. It's changing from mainstream media to people getting the information online, on social media now. We're seeing, America and the influence of various people in America, how they can almost control the outcome of an election. You know, people, very rich, powerful, wealthy individuals, if they've got control of social media, they can control outcome of elections. And things are changing. So that conversation is going to happen. It may happen in various social media settings. It may take a while before it filters through to mainstream television, but it will have to happen because people are rightly concerned. The vast majority of the public would want that openness. And what is wrong with openness and transparency?
Yeah.
You know, if you're doing something wrong, then it's wrong. And if people find out about it, then so what? If you're doing something that's right and you're acting for the right reasons, then what's wrong with the openness and transparency so people can see that you're acting properly and honourably? What's wrong with that? So the concern and the worry is the cover-up. And there is so much that's covered up. But that's always been the case. You've got politicians who will ultimately make those decisions. You know, the individual police officers will be governed by their inspectors. The decisions are made by the CPS lawyers, who are governed by the chief people within the CPS, who are governed by the government departments. And it just goes up and up and up the chain. And so they've got people in power that will control the outcome of what happens lower down. And so decisions being made every day, how it affects court cases. It's not the individuals involved in those court cases that really have the power to make decisions. It's somebody further up the chain. If a case ever gets to court, somebody's made that decision for it to go to court. But in many cases, the decisions are made, no, that one doesn't go to court. But there's no explanation of why it's not given. I actually, although I'm a defence lawyer, I get inquiries every week, often daily, from women, from girls who have been let down by police officers who are contacting a defence firm to say, can you help me prosecute? Now, that is a crazy, crazy situation to have. What is going wrong with society if the people who are supposed to be protecting these vulnerable people are now requesting help from defence lawyers? It beggars belief.
It beggars belief, as do stories of young girls, sometimes as young as 12 or 13 years of age, arrested by police officers at the scene of the crime, the alleged crime, alleged victims of the most awful sexual violence. And it's the cops that arrest them for being drunken and disorderly. I mean, these sorts of stories are beyond the pale, aren't they?
They are. I'd like to say I think it's happening less often now. I mean, certainly, I often have a conversation with clients and people that I chat to that 20 years ago, a woman could go into the police station and say, look, I'm the victim of rape, sexual assault, and the attitude of the police would be, well, it must be your fault. Now, a girl goes into the police station and said, look, I'm the victim of a sexual assault. The attitude is, okay, let's work with you on this, let's see what's going on, let's prosecute, let's do something right. So attitudes have changed a lot over recent times, and that's certainly a good thing. But there is, once that decision to investigate, that's the decision to start the ball rolling, but then it just filters out. It takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I've been working on some cases 3, 4 years, and we're still nowhere near a charging decision. I mean, so the individuals concerned are left in limbo for years and years, living in the same area where the alleged abuse has happened. What is the easy answer? I don't think there is an easy answer, Mark. There's no easy answer to this. It's a whole problem. There's a wider problem. I hope it's not going off where we're up to here, but the wider problem within society about how do you get these young girls being so vulnerable anyway? How do they get to that stage where the 12, 13, 14 years old, they can be in a position where they can be abused by men in that local community? What's going on with the parenting, the family, the setup, the schools, education, social services, child services? If they're in child care homes, what has gone wrong with the whole basis of society that these young children can be in a position where so easily they can be groomed and abused by certain people?